I'm Stuart Roberts of NDF Research, and I recently had the privilege of sitting down with the Scientific Advisory Board of Kazia Therapeutics. They're a great bunch of people, and they include Dr. Karen Ferrante, who has had a varied career in the biotech sector. Most importantly, she was Chief Medical Officer of Millennium Pharmaceuticals, which was one of the really successful life science companies in the 1990s and early 2000s.
Well, so my training, as you know, is an oncologist, and throughout the years of my drug development career, I have worked very closely with a number of regulatory experts and have some exposure certainly to mechanisms and pathways for thinking about drug approvals in the regulatory environment. Yes.
Dr. Ferrante has some really in-depth knowledge, not only about how hospitals interact with cancer patients, but particularly how cancer drug developers like Kazia interact with regulatory agencies, particularly the FDA.
So I absolutely agree with you. In fact, I have found over the last several years the agency to be much more collaborative. Right. So working closely with companies, and again, in the setting of an accelerated approval, you have that dialogue back and forth about the development strategy, what is the end point that they'll accept. You even think about in breast cancer in the neoadjuvant setting, looking at complete response rate in that particular population as a surrogate of clinical benefit. So there's really been, I would say, to use your term, much more adventurous side of the FDA.
One of the big opportunities for Kazia with GDC 084 is the potential for accelerated approval, where the FDA would grant conditional marketing authorization for the drug without the immediate need to conduct a larger phase 3 clinical study.
Sure. So I can give you two examples because there actually is an example. There is precedent for Avastin in recurrent GBM getting accelerated approval based on response rate and duration of response, if you will, or durability of that response. So that's one of the standard ones. Depending on the trial design, so if you're in recurrent disease and looking at response as an endpoint, that would be one opportunity to discuss with the agency about moving forward for accelerated approval. Sure. Similarly, I think the progression-free survival endpoint, where there's also precedence in various tumor types, that would also be something that could be discussed and considered. So the point is, you don't have to think about just survival. You can go for earlier endpoints to demonstrate benefit.
Having worked for both large companies as well as smaller emerging companies, Dr. Ferrante had some insights not only with regard to the opportunities that companies like Kazia face, but also the risks that they have to manage.
At the end of the day, you have to have a regulatory package that's quality. Right. And so, typically one of the challenges that particularly small companies can face are, trying to think about being efficient in terms of, trial design and execution. And at the end of the day, the data have to stand up to regulatory review in both the FDA or potentially worldwide. So, kind of the advice is you don't cut corners.